how to speak to a CMP examiner, because this is critical, right? So you understand the
Probably in Latin.
foundation. Yeah. Sign language, right?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
so how this is my personal advice. This is not doctrine at all. I like to approach a CMP examiner kind of mathematically and to understand the formula, and I'll give it to you here in a second. But you have to understand what the VA needs for service connection. It's not what they want, it's what they need. They need it. And if you don't have it, you will be denied. And it goes down to it's what's known as the big three. It's in 38 CFR. And any decision letter you ever have, you can look at the reference codes for these three. Number one is the in-service event, okay? Meaning something in the military happened or the condition manifested itself in service. Sometimes people call this time in service. It's the same thing. Two is a current diagnosis. That condition must be chronic. A very, very common example of a denial for current diagnosis is, people will join the military with flat feet. It's extremely common. And then they go through 10 years of military service. There's no evidence of foot pain. It's labeled as acute, meaning that condition is not chronic. And so they have a CMP exam, and then they are diagnosed with acute flat feet. The condition must be chronic. Okay, it has to be a disability. That's where we get the name of VA disability. Although I firmly disagree with that, and I would just say VA compensation. That's a
Yeah.
side note. And then the third thing, which is most important, that will be provided by the CMP examiner. Okay, your examiner is required by contract to give the nexus. The nexus is just linking one thing to another. In this case, it would be the current diagnosis and your in-service events to your military service. And there's some jargon on that. That was a solid pun saying at least as likely.
Mhm.
There's 5 nexus statements the VA will use. 3 of them you'll see. It's less likely as not, which means no. It's at least as likely, which means probably, right? But in VA terms, it's a yes. And then there's more than likely, which is like a super yes. The other 2 are due to, which is 100%, or not due to, but you will rarely see those. And so, how to speak to a CMP examiner. Now that we understand the foundation of the big 3, the formula goes, the CMP examiner says, hey, talk to me about migraines. I'm going to tell you what you don't say. Oh, I get migraines, 2 or 3 times per month. That's about it. You don't say that, okay? Here's how I would answer that question. Hey, talk to me about your migraines. Oh, in 2013, because I know my evidence, because we are informed and educated. In 2013, in the Marine Corps, on my health assessment, I complained about migraines, XYZ. From then, I was told to suck it up. So I was doing over the counter medication. When I left the Marine Corps, I had migraines the entire time. Then I went to VA healthcare. Okay, I went to my primary care team. I talked to my physician about migraines. I was given medication, injections, whatever that looks like for you. Okay, um, and I still have migraines ever since. Now, the formula for that, if you were to dissect that, is you were literally giving the examiner the in-service event, the current diagnosis, and continuity, right? So if you take the in-service event, you add the current diagnosis, and then you add the continuity, that equals service connection. And you're basically doing the CMP examiner's job verbally. And that response of referencing those 3 is a lot better than saying, I get migraines 2 or 3 times per month, right? I read 38 CFR. Oh yeah, they're prostrating. I'm sensitive to light. Which is good that you did do that, but you're missing how to actually deliver, or not deliver, articulate what the heck is happening to you in a way that the VA needs for service connection. That was a huge long rant. I'm very passionate about this topic on speaking with the CMP examiner because it is a large variable. Jason, I would like to hear your 2 cents on, if you were to give a veteran advice on speaking with the CMP examiner, because this is make or break. This is make or break right here.
Good point. It is make or break. And I am in the camp of there's two things that you need to accomplish. Service connection, yes, all day long. But the thing that is missed so often is this is your opportunity to address what your rating should be. You are the patient and you should know you better than any doctor. And if you read, as Clay said, the schedule of ratings for your condition, and you can read it. Now, granted, some of the words are super medical terms and they use weird words, right? If you don't know what it means, Google search it, translate it, and you'll go, oh, that means difficulty swallowing, right? So let's talk about GERD for a second with the C&P exam. So I love that you used migraines. That's one of my favorite ones to use. And now I think that with these two examples, migraines and GERD, this shows you how important your words are. Okay.
Yeah.
It's different than a back condition or something like that, or high blood pressure, because they'll just measure your blood pressure and it is what it is, and you're on whatever medication you're on, or you can bend this far before there's pain. Now, granted, your words matter there, but there is the reality of this is how far I can bend. So you can really screw up your results by not being prepared. Now, being prepared, and I like your algorithm for creating your formula, right? Your algebra to figure out how to do that. And that's really important, because what Clay is talking about here is, imagine if, and we alluded to this at the beginning, if the VA didn't really send all of the relevant information to the C&P examiner. Now you need to bridge those gaps. Like Clay said, you need to have that nexus. The nexus is the link between your diagnosed condition and your time in service, either manifesting during your time in service or as a result of your time in service, is kind of the way I look at it. Now, with GERD, let's say the same example, right? You went through and you have nothing in your military records regarding GERD. So you're trying to, I call it manufacture evidence. Okay, so you've done that to get your claim going. So now you're at the C&P exam. You've gotten your buddy statements. You've gotten, your nexus letter from your doctor, and you've done all your homework. Now you're at the C&P exam, and I've seen this happen, and it's very sad to run into situations after the fact, because it's always the same thing. I wish I would have known, right? So that's the whole point of this, is to eliminate the I wish I would have known. So what would I tell somebody who's going in? Well, what I would tell them is review that schedule of ratings for GERD. Make sure that you understand where you are in that schedule of ratings, right? You're the patient. You know how bad it is, right? If you rate a 60% rating in your mind because you're reading it and you should rate that, then you should. If it's a 30, then be honest with yourself, right, as you're doing this. And then you need to be able to regurgitate that information at the C&P exam. So you can either write it down, right? Now, if it's a QTC or the other one where they're asking you for that information, this is where you want to take that information and put it in that form that you're going to give back to that C&P examiner. Or you're going to call in and say, hey, I have some additional, additional evidence or statement or whatever that I want to add into the file, right? I'm the patient. You're going to be asking me questions anyway. So if you're able to, great. You're taking that information from that C&P or from that schedule of ratings, taking that information, printing it out, writing it down, whatever, showing up to your C&P exam. Now you're there. Now you're going to incorporate what Clay said, which is you're painting the picture of, in whatever year, in the middle of my time in service, I started experiencing this. It was frowned upon. It's no surprise to the VA or the C&P examiners that going to medical for anything was frowned upon. They hear it 1,000 times a day. So it's not like it's, what? I can't believe you didn't go. Turned a little blue there. I get a little, sad about it. So here you are saying that you have not went to medical or saw a corpsman, saw a medic, went to the battalion aid station or anything like that. You self-medicated, like Clay said. And so now you've done that until you got out, and then 5 years later, after you got out, you saw a commercial with Larry the Cable Guy about Prilosec, and so now you're like, hey, well, maybe that one might help me, and I don't need to eat a bottle of Tums. So you go to the doctor, and finally you get diagnosed, and you get the Prilosec, and all of a sudden it's not as bad. You can actually maybe sleep most of the way through the night instead of choking on hot lava, and so now life's a little bit better. But now you have your diagnosis, and you have your prescription, and you have all that information that you could take in. So you're explaining that it happened during the time of service. I like to say you're kind of explaining why you didn't have it documented while you were in service. You need to explain why, and it needs to make sense. And does the VA get it right, even if the C&P examiner says, at least likely is not? Sometimes the VA still screws it up and goes, well, I see this other thing, and there's nothing really in service, and we'll deny it. And we collectively have probably seen thousands of denials turn into ratings, right? And so this happens, and so you need to be able to stand firmly, knowing what you should be awarded. I feel like I'm going on and on here. I'm going to wrap it up real quick. So the big thing is that knowing the schedule of ratings is important, and being able to tie it back to your time in service in your conversation.